Hey everyone, it's Sophie from Build Your Jungle, and today's video is aimed at new plant parents because today I'm going to be covering the very basics of how to repot a plant, how to choose the right pot and growing medium. I'll be explaining how to repot that new plant you've just brought home and also how to upsize the pot of a plant that's already existing in your collection, because there's a little trick I've got for that to make your life much easier. So when you first buy a plant from the store, it usually comes in a very dense coir mix, and that's all that's in there and no drainage. And the problem with that is that not only have plants usually already outgrown the pots when you get them from shops and from garden centres, but having a mixture for it to grow in without any drainage means that too much moisture will be retained in that growing medium and the roots can't get enough oxygen and it causes root rot, which is hard to treat and will more often than not lead to the death of your plant. And I think this is the first part where people tend to feel overwhelmed, because a lot of people promote like making their own mixes out of all different various combinations for what is best for each individual plant. But when you're a beginner, I think there are 3 mixes that you really can need for everything and that will have you covered. This is not sponsored at all, but these are just the mixes that I use. So first I have a basic houseplant mix, and it's got a lot of perlite in it. And you'll find that if you compare it to something you buy at the garden centre, those often have a lot of fungus gnats in, they're not pH balanced. And also they just don't have enough drainage. So if you don't want to have to be adding your own perlite and stuff to that mix and having a really wet mix, I would go for something like this. And at a starter level, you would be okay to pot everything in this soil. This golden pothos is a tropical plant with thick roots, and if it was to live in my bedroom, I would be potting it up into an aroid mix. But because it lives in the living room and it's very dry in there and we have the heating on, it's just fine to go into a normal houseplant mix. And you're not usually going to have a room with 70% humidity like my bedroom when you're first starting out. So there's the houseplant mix. And then if you want to get really into tropical plants, anthurium, alocasia, philodendron, you will at some point need an aroid mix, and it's very chunky, it's made of bark, and this just allows the roots to grow a lot better because it mimics their natural environment a lot more than just coir and perlite does. Because with the aroids, a lot of these plants are epiphytes, meaning that they grow up trees and stuff in the wild. So they really need something that's going to let that oxygen get to their roots better. And then finally, for cacti and succulents, you'll see a lot of different types of mixes being marketed, but I personally like one that I'd only tried at the end of last year, and I couldn't believe I'd not had one like this before. And it's a sand-based one because that mimics the desert habitat of many of the cacti and succulents. I feel like you cannot tell until it's been wet once, but it's got a lot of grit in there as well and big chunky bits of drainage, and my plants really like that. Now you're going to need a pot, and what is an important thing to note about this, and I think I'll just steal this pot. A lot of people like planters like this, but you're not going to want to plant directly into this planter because then it doesn't have any drainage and the water can't run through. And when you water your plants, it's best to do it in the sink or in the bath and then let the water run out of the drainage holes. So you don't want to just buy a pot and plant straight into it. You want to buy nursery pots. If you end up collecting a lot of plants, if you just keep these every time that you repot your plants, you'll end up with a never-ending cycle of supply of pots anyway. People often put them up for collection in bulk on Facebook Marketplace for free or for very cheap. Also, my nan and my friends like bring these pots for me if they ever have them from doing outdoor gardening as well. I definitely wouldn't buy those like Amazon multi-packs or something though, because they are like a rip-off. When you're choosing a pot size, you want to go big enough for it to have more room to grow. I could honestly go bigger with this, with it being a tropical plant. Tipping mix everywhere. Also, if you're new to the world of plants, welcome to the world of vacuuming constantly. So there's this thing that the RHS, which is the Royal Horticultural Society of if you don't know, you're not from the UK or whatever, and they have this method that I sometimes take the mick out of, where it's like 3 taps and it has to come out. I think that's terrible advice for plants that are from new shops and stuff, because it's not as bad as this one, but when the roots have grown through the holes at the bottom, you might have to sometimes cut the pot just away from this. But I think it's a lot better to just ease it out gently. If I was repotting a plant that I've already potted up myself, like initially, like after buying, then I would do the tapping, 3 taps you're out method, but I like this for new plants. I'm just wiggling it gently, and then when I know all the roots are through the base, then it usually just pops out. Another reason why I've chosen this epipremnum, other than the fact that we only had like 3 plants in the house that had not been repotted, is that it's easy for you to see the roots. So these are the roots, and in some plants they will have a lot finer roots and you'll have to be really delicate. But one of the benefits of this terrible coir mix is that when it actually has dried all the way out, because you'll find that when you're buying plants from garden centres, they're usually either too wet or completely dried out. Well, if it's dried out, you're in luck, because it just basically all falls away. With vining plants like this, they often put in multiple clippings or propagations of the plant into the pot to make it fuller. So that's what's going on here. And what I'm doing is, you can see like most of it just fell away, and you just want to gently knock away the old mix, because we don't want any of that to be left on the roots if possible. The gentler you are, the better, because sometimes plants can go into transplant shock if you damage the roots when you're taking the soil off. But if it does go wrong for you and you do end up snapping off a lot of roots, don't worry, because plants are so resilient if you just give it time to recover. But if you're gentle, it should be fine, and something with thicker roots like this is more resilient. Then with plants that have been brought in from other places, like this has obviously been in my house for a long time now, so it's there's no pests or anything, but just to prove the point, I'm going to just rinse the roots with room temperature water. So I just gave them a rinse. You could really go to town on that if you wanted to. It just helps to knock the last bits of the soil off. But if you just brought this into your house, you just might be wanting to make sure that you're not bringing any bugs and pests into your house, which you might not know about that side of it yet. I will also link my identifying houseplant pests video down below if anyone wants to learn about pests. I'm just going to pop it back in the old pot a minute. Let me just get rid of this soil. I got quite a bit of it on the floor. Then you want to take your soil. So I use the normal houseplant mix because that's what most of you guys, I presume, would be going for. And you don't just want to put it straight in. Start with, you want to fill up at least like an inch or so at the bottom. You need to just make sure that you kind of like the way that it's going to look, and don't panic because you can have a little bit of a rearrange as well as you add more soil to the pot. Gently start filling it up with soil, and you need the soil to get into the gaps in between the roots and the plant. And the reason I say gently is because you don't want to like press it down hard at any point, because when I talked about how the perlite will help it have oxygen to the roots, you're just kind of damaging the roots and undoing that by pressing it down. It's at this point when you're getting the pot filled in that you can move stuff around if you want. I like to use one hand to hold the vines while the other one fills up the pot with soil. And then one thing you can do is to gently tap the base of the pot on the surface you're working on. This is going to shake my camera. And that will help it go into any massive air pockets you've got. It might seem intimidating at first, but you really do just, you get the feel of it. It feels nice to work with your hands. Obviously, if you don't want to do it, bare hand. I didn't even think about that because I'm so used to doing it bare hand. Feel free to wear gloves if you want. I just find that gardening gloves make it difficult to really tell what you're doing, so maybe go for like vinyl gloves. And then the final tip I have on this section of the video is to make sure that you're filling up your pot high enough. I used to have a really bad habit with leaving the base of plants not covered properly, but at the same time you don't want to fill it really high up, because if the petioles are just getting soaked all the time of certain plants and stuff, it's just going to cause rot. So that's how I'm filling it up. Et voila, a repotted epipremnum. And now you can place this pot inside a cover pot if you want, like how I've got this in this one. Forgot about this one, nuzzle them in. Also, many people have different opinions on whether you should water straight after repotting. I do personally, because otherwise I forget to water them a lot of the time. The only time I might not is with a cacti, but I mean most of the time I do. I find that it helps the roots settle better into the substrate, and some plants get really dehydrated if you even leave them into fresh soil for a few hours without watering them. I am going to go water this later when I've finished this video. First, I have two more tricks for you. So this is a cactus, and I accidentally bought it the other day. I forgot that I wasn't supposed to buy any plants in January, guys. So that went out the window. I'm not sure about the species name, but the genus is Pilosoceros, like a triangle. And I think the reason I forgot that I wasn't supposed to buy plants and I went and I got this was because I've wanted one of these for ages. And it came with this pot and it was £5, and I would have paid that for this pot on its own. So pretty stoked. It's got some cute new growth there, and it's in a slightly better mix than cacti usually are. But boy, does this need repotting. So the reason I want to talk to you specifically about repotting cacti is because obviously there's quite a lot of spikes on many cacti, and some, even though it seems like there aren't spikes, there are. You need to protect your hands. So there are two things that I recommend doing for cacti. Obviously wear gardening gloves, which I'm not going to do now and I'm sure will regret. Another thing you can do is wrap a tea towel around it, which will help you as well, especially if you've got gardening gloves and tea towels, and then that allows you to gently hold on to the cacti still when you're repotting it, which makes it a lot easier. Or kitchen tongs. I like to use the tongs to hold onto them and rearrange cacti. I find it quite useful and good. So we're going to repot this cactus now, because I think it is useful when you've not repotted plants before to watch me do more than one type of plant. I'm going to squeeze it and try and loosen it first. This is going to have a lot of roots, and we'll see if we can get out at the bottom, but because of these roots we might struggle. They also seem a bit dry, but it's a bit difficult with cacti because a lot of the time the roots can seem dry. See, inside that one was not dry. When the roots are like this, there are only two options, and it's get them through the holes or cut the pot. I think most people would prefer to lose the pot than the roots. I personally don't want to lose the pot because I don't want it to be in plastic waste. Unfortunately, I don't have a cocktail umbrella because I sometimes like to push them in the thing, so I'm using this. Don't ask me what it is. I found it in the drawer. I have no idea. If anyone knows what this is. Aha, right, you can see we're almost all through now. And typically cacti have much shallower root systems. There was some damage from that one in the shop, but other than that, I mean, this is a really nice plant. You can see already that this plant has a lot finer roots than the pothos did, and you need to be quite delicate with them, but also cacti are some of the most forgiving plants. So if you do snap roots off with this plant, you're really probably not going to have a problem. I can't imagine that you would have a problem, but the risks outweigh the benefits, because if you leave this dusty, dense mix around these roots, it's surely going to rot because it's just not right for this plant. What's interesting, I've not had this genus of cacti before, and it's got a massive taproot. Some of this soil's become really compacted, and that's quite common with cacti because this is really quite heavy right now. It weighs more than my guinea pig, and to get it to stand up, the growers will compact the soil sometimes. Any plant, if you see black, mushy feeling roots and you smell them and they smell bad, that bit of root has rotted, and you should definitely cut it off with a pair of clean scissors or a sharp knife or some shears. But in cacti and succulents, it's normal for the root systems to often be drier like this. It is not a problem. As long as it's not mushy, that's a good sign. That's pretty much just root ball now. God, it's heavy, right? And for a cactus, I don't want to go up like that, like, which is the size that I would pick if this wasn't a cactus. I'm going to put it in this because it's still going to have a bit of room, but it's just about, and especially sideways room as well, because cacti grow more along the base and rather than just growing up and up and up. This species does anyway. And they tend to keep shallower root systems, so it's more important to give space width-wise than it is depth-wise. And I also don't want this to retain too much moisture, so it's better to size up gradually with cacti. And now I'm going to go for the sandy mix. And just like before, I'm just filling it up at the bottom first. By the way, heads up, this soil makes a bit of a mess in your bath the first time you water it. And with cacti, you want to leave the base bit like this uncovered because you don't want it to rot. And there we go. And now I just have to try and find another cover pot somewhere in this house for this plant. I really love this plant though. And it's exactly the same for succulents, except you won't need tongs because it's not spiky. Here I have my beautiful Bonia maculata, and it's just started to get roots at the bottom. It's ready for a repot, but it's already potted up in a nice mix because I potted this up long ago, and I don't want to disturb the roots now because there's no need because it's already got a nice mix. So I need to remove this a bit carefully, and I'm just going to hook my fingers around the vines to hold them. And I'm going to loosen this a little bit and then tap the base. Begonia roots are really fine, so you might not be able to see. Lost a bit of the soil here just from the top because there weren't any roots on that bit. It should pretty much stay intact by the roots holding it together. We're just going to pop that to one side. So I just realised I wasn't recording. Basically, I filled the pot up an inch high at the bottom with the mix. Then I put the old pot that we just took the plant out of on top of it. And then I put soil around that pot. And then I can just lift this pot out. And there you have the perfect cavity for your plant to just go in. And then you can just put a bit extra soil on the top to tuck it in. I just spent absolutely ages looking for a pot for this because I wanted it to still fit into this lovely plant pot that I've got, which I just think it looks so nice with. Yeah, that's going to be it for today's video. I hope that you guys found this helpful. If you have any more questions about plant care or anything at all, please do leave it in the comments down below. At the moment, I post long form content on Fridays, so please do hit that button, subscribe to be notified when I next make a video. I also post every day on TikTok and quite a bit on Instagram. There's all kinds of funky business on there. And if you fancy buying some illustrated houseplant art prints and botanical products, please do head over to my website. It's buildyourjungle.com. And I hope you're having a great day thinking about houseplants.